Okay, we're gonna get started. I know that we're still waiting for people to roll in, but we'll just start a little bit with the introductions. Hello, everyone. My name is Adriana Heldies. I am a multimedia producer with Voice of San Diego. In case you're not familiar with us, Voice of San Diego is a nonprofit investigative news organization committed to holding public officials accountable and giving you, the public, the tools you need to be advocates for the public good. As a nonprofit, we're dependent on members and donors like yourself to make our work possible. So thank you for supporting our work. We'd like to take this moment to recognize our sponsors, the Google News Initiative for supporting the creation of this virtual event, the College Arts and Sciences at USC for underwriting all student tickets, the San Diego Foundation for supporting our community conversations. And also thank you to Cox Communication, SDG&E, the Atlantis Group, the City of San Diego Retired Employees Association, the City Heights Community Development Corporation, the San Diego County Democratic Party, and Business for Good. Just a reminder, PolitiFest runs through Saturday, October 3rd, and you can look at the schedule at politifest.org. Several of our sessions are free throughout the event, as well as some will be available in both Spanish and English. Recordings of all sessions will be available on our website by noon the next day. And you can also use the online event guide on CEvent to connect with other attendees and learn about speakers and sponsors. And make sure you get your own VOSD mug and drinking glass, which you can looks kind of like this. It's pretty cool. Which you can click the link in the chat room, which I'll put in just a second. If you have any question for our panelists, you can go to the chat box below this video. And if you want to comment, you just you have to log into YouTube, and it's very easy to do so just using your Gmail account. You can also tweet along with the session and share your experience by using hashtag PolitiFest2020 on social media. So at this time, I'm going to introduce our moderator for today's conversation, Will Huntsberry. Will, how are you?
I'm good. Good to see you, Adriana.
Good. Okay.
Good to see you.
Yes. I'll let you take it away.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm thrilled that you're here tonight for what is a super important conversation in San Diego. 3 school board seats are up for grabs on the 5-member Board of Education here. And obviously, there's so much interest in schools right now with the pandemic and coronavirus, and questions about, should we be back in school yet? How best can we safely get back into school? What can we do for our most disadvantaged students? And I'm going to talk to all the candidates about that tonight. So let me introduce them for you. Running in District A is Crystal Trull, and she's with us tonight. She's running against Sabrina Bazo, who couldn't join us, unfortunately. I think she had another event scheduled, so she couldn't be here, but thanks for being here, Dr. Trull. In District D, we have Dr. Camille Harris, and she is running against the incumbent in that district, Richard Barrera. Richard has served the district for a number of years on the school board and is running to serve again. Then District E, we have Dr. LaWanda Richmond. Hi, Dr. Richmond. And she is running against the incumbent in that district, Dr. Sharon Whitehurst-Payne, who is now joining us too. Hi, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne.
Hello, how are you?
Good. So there's a lot of us in this panel tonight. So I think I'm going to start by giving us a time on this first question here. We'll see how that goes. I'm just going to do 2 minutes per person, and I'll time it myself, and I'll give you a 30-minute warning. But, let's talk about reopening. Obviously, that's what's on everybody's minds. When should schools reopen? How should schools reopen? I want to give this one actually to the challengers in the race first, and then I'm going to give it to Dr. Whitehurst-Payne and Richard Barrera. But I want to ask you all, do you think So in San Diego County, a number of school districts are back in session. Some of them are the smaller districts. I don't think any of them are back in school full time. Most of them are there on a hybrid basis. San Diego Unified in a couple of weeks is going to be bringing back the most vulnerable students. But I want to ask you, do you think we should already have some students back at school, or do you think the district is moving at the right pace? And I want to start with Dr. Richmond on that one.
Of course. So I think that we're in an unprecedented moment and that the school district is proceeding with caution. I do think that there are some opportunities that may have been missed, not only in how we approach reopening, only in the sense that we are seeing some things that are working in other areas locally, but also in how we're approaching our alternative, which is distance learning. I applaud the move towards hybrid learning that the district is, looking at using, and I look forward to proceeding with caution. We have to acknowledge that we found out today that no one is actually safe or immune or protected enough. So we can never speak against being cautious and making sure that we're safe. Every day we're learning new things about this disease, and we're even learning new things about how it impacts children, or even how many children have actually been infected. So it's really easy to sit back and be the armchair quarterback and have ideas about what should have been done. And it's really important to acknowledge that we're in some very unique and difficult circumstances. Although I do believe strongly in science-based thinking coupled with creative problem solving, and understanding that there is no one size fits all for any school or neighborhood.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richmond. I'm sure you guys will all be super concise, so we won't even have to use the timer. But Dr. Harris, let's go to you next. What do you think?
Okay, I just want to make sure I was unmuted. Yeah, I agree with what Dr. Richmond says. And I know the other day I pulled a recently published article on the CDC, and it pretty much, outlines a plan for safely coming back to campus. But again, we want to make sure that our students are safe, because once our students get out there, if they go into the classroom immediately with everybody coming back, there's that possible chance that they can come home, and if they get infected, they can bring it home to their families. And depending on, I know at least in the community that I live in, my district, there's, families live together and stuff. So there's large families. So there's always that risk. But I think to proceed on the side of caution is probably the wisest thing to do. And, I can't, having to face the situation, but I just think that, again, proceeding with caution, and I know we're starting back a little bit in the hybrid environment, but it's going to be wait and see. Let's see how that works. So, but again, foremost is to keep everybody safe in our community and be ready in case someone does become infected. So that would be my biggest concern. And yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you. Dr. Trull, what are your thoughts on reopening?
Yeah, so we're already about 6 weeks into the after the start of the school year. So I feel that there were some opportunities. I agree that we really need to be safe. I'm all for safety. I have 3 children of my own in the school system, 2 in middle school, 1 in elementary. So of course, I want to make sure that my children and all children are safe, as well as teachers and staff and everybody on this working in the schools. But I think 6 weeks into the school year is a little bit late. And then even the children that are going to be brought back, those most vulnerable, won't happen probably until October 13th. So it's another 2 weeks. I'm just concerned about the learning loss because of what we experienced in the spring with distance learning. And I just want to make sure that there is a sense of urgency to help those students come back, especially the more vulnerable. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness behind it that the district is doing, and we're working with the experts. But I do think that we should have been planning over the summer for both scenarios. I know that a lot of school sites have a lot of outdoor space that can be utilized in terms of creating social distancing, the airflow. And so I think that we need to be creative and to do all that we can and to give school sites flexibility if they can reopen. We have the personal protective equipment with PPE, and I think it's a matter of asking the school sites what their families are comfortable with and really understanding who wants to come back. And then the flip side of that is we have to understand what teachers and staff want to come back so that we know what we're working with, because I think that's still an unknown at this point. So I think we missed some planning time over the summer, and I think we're waiting just a little bit too long to really get this going.
Thank you, Dr. Trull. So now let's take it to our two candidates who are sitting on the Board of Education right now and helping guide this. Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, do you wish we could have gotten some students back already by now, or do you like the pace things are moving?
I've said all along that my preference would be to get them back as soon as possible. If Mr. Barrera recalls, we had a discussion back in May, June about bringing them back. In fact, I remember he and I and others were agreeing we need to bring them back as soon as possible. And once we looked at what was happening in the country, and I think today was a sobering moment for everyone here in America to see the president, who has been someone who did not believe in it, to see that he has fallen victim to this also is kind of bears a point on that we do need to exercise some caution. Believe it or not, perhaps one of the things that's more legitimate than anything is the issue of sharing with folks what's been going on. But we have brought back 3,000 folks already on campus as a test run. We call it 0 step, to find out who can sustain it, whether or not our mechanisms are in place to take care of them, do the tracing that's necessary. We've been involved in not sitting on our hands. This district has demonstrated from day one when we shut down in March that we're on our toes about what needs to occur. And having the panel of experts from UCSD to guide us, we've taken that first step of 3,000 folks, and next we'll bring in the most vulnerable people. And I really applaud the district for
30 seconds,
adhering
Dr.
to that. I'm sorry.
30 seconds to go.
Thank you. I applaud the district on bringing back those in need first, with the special education students, those students who have experienced the most learning loss, etc. So I think we're probably going at the right pace so that when we bring back everyone, we will not have to go in and out and disrupt folks. So
thank you so
money
much.
one quarterback is beautiful.
Well, you mentioned the 3,000 people you brought back. I'd love to hear more about that. But first, I'll turn it over to Richard Barrera.
No, thanks, Will. And I appreciate the perspectives of everybody so far. This has been the hardest thing, certainly, that I've ever dealt with. This is my 12th year on the school board, and if you had asked me, a year ago or 9 months ago, would we ever be in a situation where none of our kids could actually be on our campuses at school, I would have just thought that that's unimaginable. And when it started to become real in March, that we were having to contemplate shutting down, the only thing that I could think about was, how do we get back open as soon as we can? Because it is, it is crazy to think that our students wouldn't be in school, and particularly, our most vulnerable students in districts like mine and districts like Sharon's, need to be in school. At the same time, we've got a global pandemic and a killer virus, and that, as people have mentioned, we continue to learn about. If we had not closed our schools in March, none of us would have known about the importance, for instance, of wearing masks, really a lot of the issues that now we see as, necessary to prevention. So, what we've tried to do, again, is not sit back and wait for others to figure out this problem for us. We've taken initiative at each step of the process. We jumped out the first day after closure, and we started
30 seconds, Richard.
Started serving meals, to our kids. We've now served over 5 million meals. We've distributed over 75,000 computers. And like Sharon said, We do have staff that's on campus now and has been on campus since before the beginning of the year, because we are putting our plans in place to make sure that when our students come back, we've got our precautions and our protocols in place. And we can talk a little bit more about this, but we've now started a conversation to create a comprehensive system of testing that we think will be critical, not just to open, but to stay open. So we'll continue to take the initiative through this process. And we have to, number one, be focused on health and safety, but the sense of urgency that people have talked about as well. We know our kids need to be back on campus as soon as it's safe to do so.
Thank you, Richard. So now let's talk about distance learning, the other big thing on everyone's minds. We're grappling with this question of reopening, and at the same time, the district is trying to deliver the best online learning that it can. I'm going to go district by district on this one, and I'll start with Dr. Whitehurst-Payne. How well do you think online learning is working for the people in your district right now, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne?
There's no doubt about it that they need to be back learning in person. Mr. Barrera just talked about the fact that in his community and my community, we want our students back. And it will probably wind up at the elementary level that we'll have more of our students back than elsewhere. But there's no question about it that they need to be back. I've talked a lot about the kindergarten students and how we need to bring them back. They're disoriented, don't know what's going on. So as soon as we can bring them in as a part of that, the special education students, those students who are behind, and tends to be a lot of them in my community and in Richard's area. But I believe that the plan that we've put in place by systematically bringing those in need first, that was one of my priorities, was to ensure that we didn't just give any and everybody back. If we could only have 25% of the kids on campus, let's bring those back who need the services the most first, rather than some other plans that other schools and school districts can implement. I mean, it was critical to me because I recognize that learning loss that my children are experiencing, and wanted to address that concern. I think that we've done what we can in terms of bringing in the aides and finding other ways. As I talked about the Elementary Institute of Science, we've done things like that to assist our students. But in general, there's no question about it that being in person is the optimal way for a lot of our students to learn.
Thank you.
To give them that option back is best. Thank you.
Dr. Richmond, what do you think? Do you think that online learning is working for the people in District E right now? Oh, we've got you on mute. Sorry, there we go.
All right, so I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think that there are some students who are really suffering from the distance learning process, and I think that there are some students that are navigating it okay. And I think that it is not just limited to District E, because if it were, we would only have parents in District E or District D, clamoring to get their students back in school. I think that it's a shared pain with a variety of different factors contributing to it, depending upon your circumstance. I think that, it's been brought to my attention that there are hundreds of students that haven't logged in since the spring. And that's concerning. I'm sure they're experiencing not only learning loss, but then how are they spending their time? The other part, of course, is, we talk about special needs and we talk about kinder, but we also have to think about the 6,000 plus homeless students in the district and what's helping them and how are they doing and how are they being supported through this process. I appreciate the emphasis on bringing people back and getting everybody back in schools. But the reality is where we are right now, we also need to make sure that we're doing the best we can to continuously improve our alternative solution so that we are better serving the people that until we're at a point where everybody can come back, we're giving them the very best variety of options and opportunities. Distance learning has been delivered. There are a bunch of different tools and methods, and a lot of it is much more active and engaging. And depending upon the instructor and their delivery style, sometimes students can actually break the fourth wall. And yes, they're sitting in front of a computer, or in some cases standing, because we figured out that you don't have to just sit there while you're engaged in a distance learning class. I do a virtual boxing class, which I definitely don't sit through. So I think we need to be more creative in how we're delivering solutions.
Thank you, Dr. Richmond. All right, let's go to District A on this one. Dr. Trull, what do you think about online learning right now and how well it's working?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on who you talk to. You know, some families, it's a great option. Some families, it's not. You know, prior to the pandemic, online learning was a choice, was an active choice that some families would make for their family situation. And now it is not a choice anymore. It's what we have to work with. So, I mean, I think in terms of how it's working, you know, we really need to figure out how to create a robust, rigorous online learning framework. So for me as an educator, I teach at UCSD and USD. I had to transition to online teaching in the spring. And since then, I have learned so much about what it means to teach in an online environment. It requires a totally different approach. It requires a totally different way of instruction. And so I think that there's a lot we can do to improve and moving forward and understanding what are expected outcomes in distance learning environment. And one thing that we know for sure as an educator, you cannot get as much done in an online environment as you can during in person. So we have to adjust for that. We have to really be intentional about how we're aligning our online instruction. And so, you know, moving forward, I absolutely think that distance learning will be something that our district can offer. I think that we can have a lot of success, especially in terms of offering additional classes, opportunities for kids. So I think that we need to really focus on doing both well, having that online rigorous instruction as well as the on-site, and using this opportunity to really rethink both of those.
Right, right. Richard Barrera?
So, yeah, I mean, first of all, again, we always have to recognize that for the overwhelming majority of our students, online learning is not anything in comparison to the quality of education that they receive when they're in person. But we have to make online learning work as best as we can, given the realities of the pandemic. And I am very proud of the incredible effort that we see every day. Our students are working so hard to try to make this work. Our parents are, taking on so much responsibility, and our teachers. I talk to teachers who typically now are saying that they're up until 2 or 3 in the morning every day doing planning, because there's the usual time for lesson planning, but then I think, as Crystal was mentioning, there's the time for planning in anticipation of technology glitches, or kids not being able to turn on their video, or all of the different things that make it hard, and teachers have to plan out in such detail how it's going to work successfully. So people are working incredibly hard. I do think that what we're seeing now in the fall is a much better version of online learning than when we just had to get it up and going in the spring. We have, I think, a very strong agreement with the teachers about a more robust amount of live instruction, and we've done a lot of training. That included training in the spring, but also the first week of school, we devoted the entire week to training for staff, parents, and students in a number of topics, but including how to be successful online. So our first responsibility right now is to make sure that online is working as well as we can, as we also do the work necessary to begin to reopen.
Dr. Harris, let's hear from you on this one. Your thoughts about online learning. Oh, we got to unmute Dr. Harris. I think we're going to get it done momentarily here. Okay, there we go.
There it goes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Indeed, yep.
Okay. Okay. So I think from my personal experience having taught online, and from just what I know and what I've done in research, it's not for everybody. And I think having to do this quick transition from face-to-face to online learning has been difficult for a lot of students and their families. And so that is the one thing, is making sure that we get them up to speed and learning how to learn online, because it is different. It requires discipline. It requires parent education, understanding, and, you know, because we've always done it this way. We've always done it face to face. So how can we support the parents? How do we support the students? Because it is more difficult. And like I said, having taught online before, it requires a lot of work to maintain student attention, motivation, and engagement, prepare lessons, be able to provide, you know, enough, like I did things like on YouTube, I did synchronous and asynchronous learning, and it is a lot more work for our teachers. So in essence, I would imagine it equates to more work for our students, and having to be able to sit there in front of a computer for how knows how long, and then be able to walk away, do a lesson. And the other thing I think about too is that our teachers, are they still able to have their learning communities to come together and kind of share ideas and say, what have you done this week? What have you done that's differently? That's really important for our teachers and our administrators to be on board with that. I know I went online today just to get an idea as to some ideas of what to do to improve online learning, but there's a website called OECD, and it's an Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And so what that showed was different resources and professional development for our teachers to tap into, that as free resources if they need more ideas on how to do this. So it is difficult. I do not want to dismiss that, because it's difficult for everyone. So how do we make it an engaging environment, whether we do it outside, or whether we, you know, do we have enough Wi-Fi powered in so they can do it outside? Since we live in California, we got all this warm weather, but then we have to, you know, if it gets too hot, a lot of things to consider. So, but I think for now, I would say online learning is difficult for people. And then those who don't have technology, and how are they adapting? Are they using their iPhones or their phones to learn and communicate? So there's all these different things that the district is having to consider in order to prepare and to be able to engage our students. So I'm hoping over time, I know where the district is thinking about going into a hybrid model, which I think from my research that I've done personally, hybrid is probably the most attractive environment for students. So, and there again, kindergartners, how do we engage kindergartners? They're so cute. So how do we help them to make sure that they're learning too? So I think with all the knowledge that we have as educators, that we could come together and come up with an environment and a method of teaching and learning for our students, but also keeping in communication for our parents.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. So you just brought up the youngest students, and you know, I was kind of surprised you all gave me a hopeful take of online learning, and I guess as people who want to lead the district, you all should be very hopeful in the district. But obviously, all six of us have heard stories of online learning being a real disaster for some families, not everyone, and some people are learning new things about how it works for them, as you pointed out. But I think especially when it comes to kindergartners, first graders, second graders, it's just been a real struggle. And so I want to come back to the question of reopening and ask, you know, is there anyone among the five of you who would support having some kindergarten, first, second, and third graders in school as of today, say 1 or 2 days a week? Is there anyone who would be prepared to support that right now and thinks it should be happening? Because I just want to get you guys concretely on the record on this one. raise your hand. I'll give you the opportunity to speak. Maybe no one. That's okay.
Well, I'd be happy to answer that. I absolutely would support that, provided we have the right protections and safety measures in place. Absolutely. But also, we would want to be sure that families are comfortable with that. I wouldn't want to make it a demand all kindergartners, first and second, third graders have to come back. We really need to make sure that families are comfortable with that. But I absolutely agree with that. I hear from parents all the time, especially with little ones. They're just pulling their hair out. They don't want their child in front of a screen as much as Zoom requires, first of all, and they want their children to socialize. They want them to understand, what it means to be in a learning environment. I think it just really sets them up for success in the later grades, and those first few grades of school are so important, so foundational. Right. So I absolutely would support that with the right measures in place, of course.
Dr. Richmond raised her hand first, I saw, so let's go to her next.
So I would say that if we focus on the very youngest grades, there's absolutely formulas you can work out where you can reduce the density and spread them out, either for part days or alternate days, so that they're in small enough groups to be manageable. And I know that there would definitely be some benefits for them. And I have to say, if we feel like it's safe for adults to go to a bar, it should be okay for a few children to be in a learning environment. In fact, I agree with Scott that we should have prioritized learning environments over bars and gyms. But I don't get to make those decisions. I know I've seen it work, and I think some people are concerned about managing small children. But if you have them in small enough groups, you put the right protocols in place, and yeah, it can be done, and it's being done successfully in other districts within San Diego County. So it's not impossible, but it requires some creative problem solving, and it's not something easy. And I think one of the concerns is with us having our spikes every time there's a holiday, because adults think the virus takes a holiday and that they can go and act like nothing's wrong. It jeopardizes our status in terms of what we can do. And I do think that the disruption of bringing them back and then sending them home and then bringing them back because adults are not following safety protocols could have its negative byproducts. But I think it's really possible to make it work.
Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, I saw you wanted to weigh in.
Yes, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Starting in the spring, we knew we had a problem with the kindergartners. Out of 2,000 or so kids who did not check in the spring, half of them were kindergartners. So we knew that was a level we really needed to focus on. And again, we've had some success with them in this fall, but we absolutely knew that was going to be an issue. We think that as a district, we did an excellent job in terms of planning for bringing students back this fall, but not only that, for planning last year, recognizing that online learning was not done optimally, if you will, and did a lot of planning this summer the board insisted that we have one program or two programs so that we were not all over the map. We put in place some strong requirements. Those standards are being met in the fact that we did the workshops. We recognize that most of the children have checked in. We know for a fact most of them have checked in with us. But now with the kindergartners, I think a couple of board meetings ago, we were all ready to just bring the kindergartners back. But you still have to exercise that caution that our expert medical panel is guiding us on. And with that, we're not afraid to bring back children, small groups. Kindergartner teachers, they know what to do. They're looking forward to bringing children in at the appropriate time. And you'll be seeing us rolling out an additional plan as we move forward.
I think you guys all wanted to weigh in on that one, and I'm going to let Richard and Dr. Harris weigh in next. But you guys mentioned the panel, just to throw a bit of info into the mix here. I was on a panel with Dr. Kimberly Prather last night, who is part of the panel advising you all. And she was talking about what a great job you were doing in fairness of all the context. But she was also talking about how outdoor activities are, for the most part, extremely safe. And I said, so could we have some classes being held outside right now? And she said we could. So, you know, I as an education reporter who's extremely concerned with equity and what's happening with our most vulnerable children, that's something I've been really focused on, as you all know. But so I don't know if you want to add to it with that information, but I think I saw Dr. Harris before I saw Richard's hand, so I'll go to her first, then we'll go to Richard.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to add to that.
Okay, so the one thing that I was thinking about as everyone was speaking, that I think I think we should bring back the little ones, the little kiddos first, but also too, we need to take into consideration, I have a friend who has a young child, but her elderly father lives with them. So we need to look at that scenario too. So, I mean, depending on how this all rolls out, getting an assessment, you know, on the students' families to see whether or not there's going to be a domino effect if they come back and they go, and yeah, we want them to be able to have that social emotional interaction, but is there going to be is there going to be some, are we going to get some kind of run into problems if we don't take that into consideration? So that's the one thing that I would be, I want to be considerate of that. So but I definitely think that our little ones should be coming back to campus, because it is so, like Crystal said, it is foundational that they have that social interaction, at least first through third grade, from what I remember in my studies, that it's so important that they have that. And they are the most healthiest of that we've found so far as exposure to COVID and stuff. So, but also too, I want to take the families into consideration as well as the older teachers.
Richard?
Yeah, so I agree again. I'm sorry if the sparks aren't flying yet in this forum, Will, because I do. I agree.
You guys agree on everything. I'm trying.
It's a problem. We got to get more Trump Biden going. And particularly what Camille just talked about we've got to be concerned about the situation that our students live in. As we bring kids back to school. Look, we've got a plan, the first phase that's about to begin, which is elementary school students. That, of course, includes our youngest, kindergarten through third grade students, but who are the students who are most vulnerable to learning loss, including our homeless students, including students with certain special needs, including students who teachers have identified are falling behind. And we will bring those students back onto campus. And in that first phase, we're going to learn a lot. And, part of the reason to do this in phases is so that we can learn. So then we can move to the next phase. And that means bringing more students back onto campus. And when you bring more students back onto campus, you're also bringing more adults back onto campus. And so let's get phase one right, which is, again, the recommendation of our UCSC panel, which includes, Will, we've been working with Kim Prather. It's really, the question is about ventilation. Do we have the right ventilation in our classrooms and in our schools? And in some cases, that means setting up outdoor classrooms, which we will. And in some cases, it means improving the ventilation in our existing, classrooms with filters in our air conditioners, or, different strategies. So we'll have all of those strategies in place. And we're going to do phase one, and we're going to learn a lot from it. But there is, a myth out there that I wish were true. And that myth is that kids don't contract or spread the virus. And it is just not the case. And there's too much evidence. The American Academy of Pediatrics did a study that as soon as schools started to reopen across the country, we saw a massive increase in the number of virus cases among kids. And so, if we want to, just sort of play fast and loose with the science, then we just basically buy into these myths and we say, oh, kids can't catch the virus, not a problem. Well, we've seen, again, today, what happens when you play fast and loose with the science, and when you go around, repeating information that's just not true. So, and we're all, hoping for the best, for the president. But let me tell you something, I am never going to be in a position where I'm going to put a 6 or 7 year old or a 6 or 7 year old's parents or grandparents in a situation where they could be facing a deathly virus because we just said we don't really feel like paying attention to science because it's more convenient to just ignore it. So again, we've got to take this seriously and move in careful phases.
Thank you, Richard. So I want to, I actually wanted to, go ahead. If you have a quick point, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, we've only got 12 minutes left, so I want to hit another topic.
Just one quick point on that. People talk about equipment and all that and devices. We've spent $45 million on equipment in preparation. We were not sitting on our hands. We have already spent and have available that equipment ready to go.
Thank you, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne. So I want to switch gears and talk about something not related to coronavirus and just how the district is doing. San Diego Unified is a massive district that manages about 150 schools. You all have clusters in your district of different schools, some probably all great in their own way, some certainly more desired in their own way. There's different perceptions about each of them. I want to start with District E again. We have several schools across the district that have been put on the state's watch list because they haven't done well in a number of metrics. We're long past the days when all we talk about is test scores. There are some schools that are also struggling with absenteeism and with high suspension rates and have been struggling with those things for a very long time. And the highest concentration of them is in District E. So I think I gave the last District E question to Dr. Whitehurst-Payne first. So I'm going to give this one to Dr. Richmond first. Do you think that the district is doing a good job for schools in District E? We're going to unmute you too. Sorry, we just a little lag on that, but we're
okay. So that's a loaded question. I guess I'd start by saying that if you only look at test scores, then absolutely there are a lot of challenges and there are a lot of opportunities. There are schools where we have a high concentration of English language learners, where we have a high concentration of students who have experienced trauma, who have a high ACEs score. I think that there are some opportunities in terms of trauma-informed care and restorative practices and rethinking discipline practices. I think that there are a lot of diversity and social justice issues that come up. The other part of that, though, is we also have to look at, so if you have a school that is a feeder school into another school, if the problem isn't solved at the elementary level, when they get to middle school, they're still going to be behind. So even if they make progress, it's not necessarily going to reflect favorably on the school. The other part is, I think that because we tend to do a deficit approach when we're evaluating schools and parents are making decisions about where to send their children, what happens is you have parents who find out that a school didn't perform well. They take their children out of that school so that their children do not become poor performers. And so then all of the data in the next phase is based on the children who, for lack of a better word, are left behind. So I think a big part of that is beyond just how to serve them, but how to instill confidence and trust so that the whole child has a sense of belonging and is prepared and ready and feels like they can be successful and they can learn. I look at a school like Lincoln where you have scholars.
20 seconds left.
Yeah, all right. I look at a school like Lincoln where you have students who are high performing, high achieving students, and they get to read in the paper all the bad stories about Lincoln. And that's not to say that bad things aren't happening at any schools, but I do think that we need to do a better job of doing a strength-based and strengths-focused approach to how we not only look at students, but schools.
Thank you. Dr. Whitehurst-Payne, same question.
Put it all.
Here we go.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Are you hearing me? Okay, thank you. On a continuum, I happen to have some history and know where these schools were and where they are now, and where I would like to see them go, and I think the community wants to see them go. And I must say that we are making progress. Is it where I want it to be? No, but we are on a continuum making progress. First of all, we've ordered cluster studies and had the school year not ended as it did, where we're going to look at Lincoln as a cluster to see whether or not we had the right models. In the interim, now we're working with MTM. In fact, last night we had a session with the architect. They're going to be partnering with Earth Lab to bring in community support from UCSD, from Groundworks, so that we have a seamless community-based Earth concept at that particular school. It's a matter of going in, looking at each cluster to determine what that cluster needs, because the cluster in the Morse area will not need the same thing that the Lincoln cluster or that the cluster at Crawford needs. But what we've been doing is systematically looking at each cluster to see what does that particular cluster need. One of the things happening in Richard's area that's really exciting is the Logan complex. I've visited O'Farrell and said, why is it that we have Fulton right up on the hill from Morse and we're not making that seamless? We have pre-K 8 right there at Fulton. It should flow right into Morse, and that's what we need to be examining, how we can bring together a group of parents who will focus as we're doing with the Memorial complex. And I think what we're going to do in the Mid-City, we're beginning to look at the community-based school concept to enhance schools even more. Sorry.
Thank you. No, it's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne. I'll go to Dr. Trull now. Dr. Trull, how do you think the district is doing with the schools in your district? Are there any big successes or big things that you think need to be fixed that you see?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this question just as, just hearing the other responses. So District A is made up of Claremont, Mira Mesa, and University City. And half of our student population qualifies for free and reduced lunch. So we really are a microcosm of what's happening in the district as a whole, with the same types of student populations, same issues. We have inequities. And I think a lot of people sometimes think of our district as kind of affluent, but we have some of the same equity issues. And in terms of how the district is performing, I guess, or is it doing a good job in sub-district A, it really depends on the school's site. I think a lot of parents in Claremont specifically would tell you that the district has not been doing well in terms of parent engagement. This sense of, we have things to offer more than just donating to our local PTA. We actually want to be involved in this conversation of how to make our schools better. And oftentimes parents are just kind of, what I hear in the community is, it feels like you're just checking a box. The district just says, okay, we met with thousands of parents, but really, what are we doing? So up until the summer, the think tanks were widely attended, I think, because parents were fired up and ready to kind of talk. And even out of that, there wasn't, I think, a lot of communication back to us about what happened there. So I think it varies by school when you talk about performance. So you have the kind of the
30 seconds.
Thank you. The parent engagement piece, which I would say just kind of climate of the district, and then you have performance, and it really varies by school. So, I think it's a broader question, and it really just depends on where you're from. Of course, we have some high-performing schools like University City, but there's still some issues to be worked out in terms of how the district is doing.
Thank you, Dr. Trull. I think I went to, we've unmuted Dr. Harris. Let's go to Dr. Harris.
Okay. So when I look at this, when I hear parents talking about it, and me, since I work for university and I have counselors counselors in training. And so I'm going from site to site to site. So I'm all over San Diego. And so what I'm hearing here is each school has its own unique contributing factors as to what's going on with each school site. And I like what Dr. Richmond said as far as strength-based. I'm definitely a strength-based educator, and I just really think that we need to look at that more closely to utilize that when we're working with each individual student. And I remember at a forum, probably at the very beginning of this whole process, I remember one parent had typed into the chat box is that they didn't hear about how their student was doing until much later. And so again, I mean, communication is key in all of this. So we need to be able to, teachers and administrators need to be communicating with their parents. So if they see there's an alarm that goes off, then if a student needs problems, then that needs to be addressed right away. And so, and I know that the school has the capabilities, all the schools have the capabilities to do, because I've sat on student study teams when a student is struggling academically. So we have the resources in the district. It's just a matter of being able to monitor that, and how that process is going to be done, I don't know. But, you know, it's been that ongoing problem for some time. So, but like I said, I'd like to look at each school individually, because there are contributing factors for each campus.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. And Richard Barrera, who's been on the school board 12 years, he pointed out, how do you feel about the progress of the schools in District A?
Well, I mean, I think we have to recognize that, I'm sorry, yeah, that over the last decade, we have seen a historic process of transformation and improvement in student achievement in our district. You know, over a decade ago, our district was characterized by low expectations for certain students, characterized by low achievement and stagnant achievement for certain students, and characterized not only by a low level of resources being put into our neighborhood schools, but also by an entire institutional system that was basically saying to parents, don't go to your neighborhood school, and then we'll get you on the bus and we'll take you up and you can escape your neighborhood, and that's the way that you're going to get a decent education. And that was the institutional approach in this district. And so we have been going about changing that, reversing that. When we said that we were going to make UC A to G the graduation requirement, what that also meant, that meant setting higher standards for students, but it also meant we had to get into our schools, particularly our schools south of 8, and recognize that a kid couldn't even graduate, you know, from you know, Hoover High School, Lincoln High School, Morris Crawford, San Diego High School, having had access to the A to G courses, and we've corrected that. We also had to recognize that there were positive outliers. You know, Will, you and I have talked, and you've written about Edison Elementary School in City Heights. That's an example. Yeah, that's an example of a school that has overachieved compared to you know, what people would expect, you know, given you know, the level of poverty. But we've got to challenge ourselves and say, but if we're capable of doing that in certain schools, we should be able to do that in all of our schools. But we've also made real investments in resources. So we are seeing the physical transformation of Logan Memorial, like Sharon talked about, Crawford High School, Hoover, Wilson Middle School, historic resource investment. Now the question is, are we as Californians willing to do the right thing and invest in our public schools and turn around, you know, a 42-year experience of underinvestment? Starts with voting yes on Prop 15.
Thank you, Richard. I'm sorry we couldn't get to Prop 15. I'm sorry we couldn't get to so many other things. But you guys gave us a thorough discussion, and I really appreciate all your time here today. And everyone who is watching, I think Adriana is going to come back on now and sign us all off. But thanks again, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Will, and thank you to all our panelists who came on. And thank you guys for all your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get through them, but make sure you send them along, and then we'll pass them along to Will and the rest of the panelists so they can answer them for you. So just some final notes. Again, thanks so much for coming. You can find our next session on the event side. And if you get lost, just go back to politifest.org. Again, that's politifest.org. And remember that tomorrow is our last day of Politifest, so make sure you check out those sessions. So thanks again and have a good night.